In this video, we take a deep dive into one of the most significant geopolitical conflicts of our time, the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. This conflict is not just a modern-day territorial dispute, but a culmination of centuries of historical ties, cultural struggles, and political rivalries. We'll explore the deep-rooted history between these two nations, tracing their shared origins in Kiev and Rus, the impact of the Soviet era, and the geopolitical tensions that led to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. We will also discuss the role of Ukrainian nationalists in World War II, Russia's motivations for annexation, and the demographic and political factors driving this war. Furthermore, we'll break down what each side has gained and lost in this brutal conflict, examining the consequences for Ukraine, Russia, and the world at large. Stay tuned as we unpack the complexities of this war and what the future might hold for both nations. The historical connection between Ukraine and Russia dates back to the medieval state of Kievan Rus, which existed from the 9th to the 13th century. Kievan Rus was a powerful federation of Slavic tribes centered around Kiev, the present-day capital of Ukraine. This early state laid the foundation for the cultural, religious, and linguistic similarities between modern Russians and Ukrainians. However, the Mongol invasion in the 13th century led to the fragmentation of Kiev and Rus, with Moscow eventually emerging as a dominant power, while Ukrainian lands came under the control of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and later the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This division set the stage for distinct political and cultural developments, as Ukraine maintained European influences while Russia consolidated power in the east. By the 17th century, Ukraine's Cossack hetmanate, seeking protection from Polish rule, allied itself with Moscow through the 1654 Pereyaslav Agreement. However, instead of securing autonomy, Ukraine gradually fell under increasing Russian dominance. Under the Russian Empire and later the Soviet Union, Ukrainian language and identity were systematically suppressed. The imperial authorities promoted Russification, attempting to erase Ukrainian culture through policies that restricted the use of the Ukrainian language and repressed nationalist movements. Despite these efforts, Ukraine maintained a strong sense of national consciousness, which persisted into the 20th and 21st centuries. During World War II, Ukraine became a major battleground between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Millions of Ukrainians fought for the Red Army, playing a crucial role in the Soviet war effort. However, some nationalist factions, particularly the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, OUN, and its military wing, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, UPA, sought an opportunity to establish an independent Ukraine. These groups initially collaborated with Nazi Germany, hoping to overthrow Soviet rule. However, as Nazi policies turned oppressive and brutal, some factions of the UPA began resisting both the Nazis and the Soviets. The Soviet Union bore the brunt of the war, suffering immense casualties, particularly during the Eastern Front's most intense battles such as Stalingrad and the Siege of Leningrad. The Red Army's efforts were instrumental in defeating Nazi Germany, with the majority of Nazi casualties occurring in the East. Despite their contributions to the Soviet victory, Ukrainians continued to suffer under Stalin's policies after the war, particularly in purges targeting nationalist elements. The presence of Nazi collaborators in Ukraine remains a point of contention, with Russia using this historical fact as a justification for its current actions against Ukraine. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 is driven by a mix of historical, geopolitical, and demographic concerns. President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly emphasized that he views Ukraine as an inseparable part of the Russian world, citing historical ties dating back to Kiev and Rus. In numerous public statements, Putin has claimed that Ukrainian sovereignty is artificial and that the country should be part of Russia. This narrative has been used to justify Moscow's aggressive policies toward Ukraine, including the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and support for separatists in the Donbas region. Beyond historical rhetoric, Russia's security concerns play a major role in its actions. The Kremlin perceives NATO's expansion as a direct threat to its influence in Eastern Europe. Since Ukraine has expressed aspirations to join NATO and deepen ties with the European Union, Russia sees this as a red line that it cannot tolerate. Moscow fears that a NATO-aligned Ukraine would bring Western military presence closer to its borders, reducing its strategic buffer zone. Another significant factor is Russia's ongoing demographic decline. The country's population has been shrinking due to low birth rates and emigration, posing long-term economic and military challenges. By annexing Ukrainian territory and integrating its population, Russia could potentially counteract some of its demographic issues. Reports of forced deportations of Ukrainian children and civilians to Russia, where they are subject to re-education programs, indicate an attempt to assimilate Ukrainian citizens into Russian society. This practice has been widely condemned as a form of ethnic cleansing. Since the full-scale invasion in 2022, Russia has managed to occupy significant portions of Ukrainian territory, particularly in the east and south. The regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson have been declared annexed by Russia following internationally unrecognized referendums. Despite initial Russian advances, Ukraine has mounted a fierce resistance, bolstered by military aid from Western allies, including the United States and European nations. The war has resulted in widespread destruction, displacing millions of Ukrainians and devastating cities such as Mariupol and Bakhmut. Russia has gained a land corridor connecting mainland Russia to Crimea, which was annexed in 2014. It has taken control over key industrial regions in eastern Ukraine, particularly in Donbass, and has increased its influence over Ukrainian infrastructure and energy resources, including nuclear power plants and agricultural exports. Additionally, Russia has strengthened its domestic narrative, reinforcing Russian nationalism and anti-Western sentiment. On the other hand, Ukraine has suffered immense losses. Tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians have been killed in the conflict, and widespread destruction has affected infrastructure, including homes, power plants, and cultural sites. Millions of refugees have fled to neighboring countries, leading to one of the largest humanitarian crises in Europe since World War II. The war has also caused a significant loss of economic output, with entire industries disrupted by the conflict. Despite suffering immense losses, Ukraine has managed to push back Russian forces in several key areas. In late 2022 and 2023, Ukrainian counteroffensives successfully retook territory in Kharkiv and Kherson regions. The ongoing conflict remains at a stalemate in many regions, with both sides suffering heavy casualties but unwilling to negotiate a peace settlement on unfavorable terms. That wraps up our deep dive into the Ukraine-Russia conflict. We hope this video has helped you understand the historical, political, and geopolitical factors that have shaped this ongoing war. If you found this video informative, please consider giving it a like, sharing it with others, and subscribing to our channel for more in-depth content on global affairs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.